Today we're going to talk about navigation on top and actions on the bottom. And there's two big reasons that we have to think about this. Number one, porting. People coming from iOS or Android are expecting a certain amount of consistency when they come over to Windows Phone. And number two, convergence. Windows Phone and Windows 8 need to align. They are going to become one operating system, so we need to make sure we're designing apps that work across all the screens. Now let's look at iOS for a second. They have always had navigation up at the top, especially at the top left. And more, they're starting to put actions on the top right. But again, navigation on the top. Android's a very similar thing. They have navigation on the top. And again, they also put actions on the top right. But what about us? Over here on Windows Phone, what we do is we say, okay, you can have actions on the bottom, but you're not allowed to put navigation down there. And we don't have a bar across the top. So what do people do? They put navigation right and left with a swipe in a panorama or a pivot control, which is not always the best design. Now let's look over at Convergence. If you look at big windows, they've got navigation on top, actions on the bottom. It's a very principled approach. But if you look over at Windows Phone, we've got no place to put nav. There's a misalignment here across nav, even though it's very well aligned on the actions. Again, if you look at the big screens, all four of them side by side, iOS, Android, Windows, and Windows Phone, you'll notice there's one exception for putting nav on top, and that's Windows Phone. So this is a problem, but easily fixed. It looks like this. You just make sure you put nav up on the top, and everything works out great. So while you're designing your app, you'll notice I've put 3 lines here, what we call the hamburger. When you're designing your app, if you make every effort to put navigational elements up top, maybe behind a hamburger menu the way Facebook does, and you make sure to put frequently used actions down towards the bottom, then you'll be aligned with every other screen on the marketplace. You'll be set up for porting, you'll be set up for convergence, and you'll be set up with a great design.